Hello, Professor Jerry. Hope you're doing well. I'm Salman and I'll be presenting my topic social media, politics, disinformation, and ethics. So, my password is Durham, so let me begin. Social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram serve as virtual space where we can share all our conversations. Now, for this presentation, I'll be focusing on the political conversation that we have over social media. Algorithm design plays a crucial role in shaping users' content consumption. These algorithms often prioritize sensational and emotionally charged content, since these content provide the most uh, audience engagement. The more the audience engagement is, the more these platforms get advertisement revenue. Since advertisers feel that more the number of users and engagement is, the more brand value that they can gain over the platform. But the problem lies in the creation of echo chambers. So echo chambers is basically where users are primarily exposed to information that aligns with their preconceptions. So let me elaborate with an example. So suppose there is a person who is an anti-vax, who wanted to inquire about what this anti-vaccination movement is. So over the social media, he searches couple of videos, and next thing he knows is he's being bombarded with the recommendations of anti-vaccine videos. So what happens is, the more he listens and engages with the anti-vaccine video, the more he gets into the anti-vaccine movement, and more it basically embeds in his conscience. And this is problematic because the person wasn't an anti-vaxxer to begin with. uh, Moving on, political disinformation. So I found this wonderful article by social media political polarization and political disinformation by Tucker, Joshua Aaron, and others. I found this good image. This image basically sums up 1,000 words in it. So let me elaborate. Here we can see social media use. So more the social media use is, we can either go in two directions: political polarization or disinformation or misperception. So what they are suggesting is, the greater the gap between political polarization and disinformation is, the more divided the society becomes. It basically affects the quality of public policy or democracy. So, uh, moving on, this is the another good image that I found in the same article. Here we can see. Let's start with politicians' behavior. Politicians' behavior affects disinformation, and through traditional media use, it affected political polarization also. But since social media also comes in, it also affects the political polarization. It also enables the political engagement with the people. This basically affects the quality of public policy or democracy. This can either be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on the kind of polarization that's happening and the kind of disinformation. Because, yes, uh, moving on, disinformation and its impact on democracy. So this is the image that I found in this article by named "The Polarizing Impact of Political Disinformation and Hate Speech" by Vasisht P.N. Chatterjee and others. Here we can see that uh, there are many conditional variables here. So these variables can be disinformation by foreign governments. For example, what they mentioned about during the 2016 US elections, where they said that Russia meddled with the campaign. It could be domestic disinformation by political parties, like for example, if you can think, disinformation by Democrats and Republicans in the United States of America. or domestic disinformation by government. Like for example, there were many instances where the government lied about the COVID vaccine, and most of the disinformation was spread from the government itself. And also hate speech by political parties, this is very rampant in India. And efforts towards censorship of internet. For example, we can speak about China's censorship over the internet, where they have banned Google and many others over their privacy censorship restrictions. And also monitoring of social media by the government. So coming to Canada, Bill C-11 is highly controversial due to this, because it gives a backdoor entry for social media social media monitoring and basically censorship of a kind. So Bill C-11 is very controversial, and many of the people have objected to the bill, but it's still in the process. Coming to the ethical considerations, uh, balancing free speech and responsibility. So, social media companies face scrutiny regarding content moderation, fact checking, and transparency. Also, when it comes to user agency, individuals must critically evaluate information and consider its impact before sharing. So, whenever you see a post, it's better to verify the source where it's coming from and then share the content rather than blindly sharing it. The work by Olan et al. Sheds light on ethical challenges faced by social media platforms in combating disinformation. It is a very good article. It basically summed up the hate speech and the polarizing impact of political disinformation. Moving on, the issues and concerns. So the first concern would be disinformation proliferation. So I referred an article by Wardle and Direction 2017. So it spoke about social media platforms which serve as breeding grounds for dissemination of misleading or false information. It basically tells us that the blurring of lines between fact and fiction. The second concern would be erosion of trust. So for this, I referred Gesatel published in 2020. So here he mentioned the rampant speed of disinformation, which undermines the public trust in democratic institutions and processes. For ethical dilemmas, next concern is ethical dilemmas. So social media algorithms often prioritize engagement over accuracy, raising ethical concerns regarding the societal impact. So for this I referred to Feki, which was published in 2014. Now, issues and concerns from a religious perspective. So, being a Muslim, I'll give you an Islamic perspective of things. So, false witness. So, Islam places strong emphasis on truthfulness and integrity. Spreading false information violates this principle. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, instructs believers to stand out firmly for justice as witness to God, even if it's against ourselves, our family, or our society. So, deliberately spreading false information on social media goes directly against this. So, talking about creating discord. So, basically uh, creating this us versus them mentality, and trying to make two communities fight each other is also highly discouraged, and harming others. Basically cyberbullying comes under this category. So cyberbullying would directly go against religious perspective of social media. And violation of trust. So deliberately spreading and sharing in unchecked sources would be considered violation of this trust, since anything that you speak on social media is considered to be your own conscious, not a paid content by others that you are sharing on the social media. Last would be misrepresentation of Islam. So basically you can see um, many of the people sharing stereotypical content, or content which basically villainizes one community over the other. This is very dangerous, and it's a great concern for in the religious perspective. Moving on, issues and concerns from policy making perspective. So the number one would be threat to democracy, and social media disinformation can undermine the democratic process by spreading false or misleading information about candidates, parties, or election procedures. It can manipulate the public opinion or influence, let's say, voting behavior, or it can also diminish the trust in the democratic institutions like the court or the election commission, etc. This threatens the integrity of election and democratic governance. uh, for this I referred a paper by European Parliament. It was named Key Risk, posted by Social Media and Democracy, I think. And coming to the public health risk, so disinformation on social media regarding COVID is something that we have something we have come aware in the last couple of years. And false information about vaccines, treatments, or preventative measures can lead to public confusion, reluctance to follow health guidelines, and increased transmission of diseases. For example, wearing of masks was a big issue during COVID. So for this, I referred Journal of Medical Internet Research, Prevalence of Health Misinformation, by jmir.org. Next are national security threats. So this is well known security threats like sharing sharing security data or sharing infrastructure information to a hostile nation would count as national security threat. And also economic harm in the sense sharing of intellectual properties, or sharing data which didn't belong to the person who's sharing it, but regardless he shares it to on the internet and over the social media, uh, compromising the uh, compromising the economic uh, benefit of the data. Then there is threat to social cohesion and challenges for regulatory framework, because since privacy and data is such a subjective topic, that it is very hard to create a general framework and a law for it. There also lies complexity in content moderation and need for international cooperation, because each country and culture has a different way of seeing things. It is very difficult to get everyone on the same page and create a uh, moderation law for it. Moving on, issues and concerns from a societal or people perspective. So, from a polarization perspective, it would be deepening of divisions. Social media disinformation often targets vulnerable groups or exploits existing in societal divisions. Uh, basic and Next would be echo chambers. I spoke about the echo chambers, where it is a repeated cycle of suggesting you the same thing over and over again, and basically entrapping you in a box from which you cannot come out of, and cannot see the out of the box view of that topic. Next would be confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is when social media disinformation preys on biases such as confirmation bias, like uh, I want to have ice cream for weight loss. But uh, so what I do is I search for that over social media and find validation from someone else claiming that ice cream helps you in weight loss. So this kind of confirmation bias also is very disastrous. And us versus them mentality, basically segregating people into groups and saying that we are better, or we have it better, or uh, they are not up to our mark, and seeing them not as equals is also very dangerous. uh, Next would be undermining the trust of the public by sharing unknown sources, uh, and content that wasn't verified. And political polarization feedback loop is again like the echo chamber, where suppose if you are a supporter of one party, and so you get the content recommendations of the same kind of conversation that happen over the social media. It has a big impact on democratic governance. Moving on, laws and frameworks. So here, perspectives and considerations that I have taken is political actors. So politicians and political organizations leverage social media platforms to disseminate their messages. For example, their ad campaigns and their suppose, for example, here in Canada, we have been hearing acts that tax for the carbon tax that's being put up by the Trudeau government. um, so these kind of messages also play a key role in the disinformation and polarization of the public. Then there are platform owners. So from the paper by Hellberger and DeVries, we came to know that I came to know that social media companies wield a significant influence over public discourse and narrative. So we saw this in the example of Twitter. So it's about half the time, and I'll say my second password, that would be Toronto. And so moving on. So in the case of Twitter, um, what happened was Twitter basically became a censoring hub, where it basically censored everyone that it felt is going against their view. So Elon Musk came over and basically fired 90% of the employees, stating that this is a social media platform, not a censorship place. And coming to users and citizens, and social media users are both consumers and producers of information. So they both create the content and consume it as well. So they are play the critical role in shaping the digital space. However, they are the most vulnerable too. So uh, referring to Gesatel 2020, I came to know that the most vulnerable uh, in the social media campaign is the content creators themselves. Since the their lives is so public that it takes a big toll on them. Then there are ethical frameworks and guidelines, where we see transparency and accountability. Ethical frameworks have to emphasize on the transparency and accountability, where whoever is sharing the data is held accountable for the source that he's mentioning in the content. Uh, and Next would be digital literacy and education. It's basically teaching people how to verify the content, how to know that this content is coming from an unknown source, or is coming from a source which is known for spreading propaganda. So that is very crucial. Moving on, here I have a list of some organizations that do this work. So first is Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF. So they advocate for digital rights and online freedom while conducting uh, research and litigation to address issues such as privacy, censorship, and governance, government surveillance. Next is Center for Democracy and Technology, CDT.org. Uh, CDT works on policy advocacy and research to advance democratic values in the digital age. Uh, Next, laws and regulations would be from the Congress itself and the Government of Canada in our case. Legislative measures such as Honest Ads Act in United States, uh, and the proposed bill C11 in Canada. They both try to regulate online political advertising and enhance privacy protection and combat harmful content. But this also raises the problem of censorship. Uh, what if the government has gets too much control and they limit our access to information? Next would be frameworks and guidelines. Here, ethical frameworks done by people like AI for People initiative, which is for recommending responsible AI development and usage, including addressing ethical implications of AI-driven disinformation. So this was referred from Floridi et al. Uh, Continuing. So here are some examples of case and incidents. So political instability and mass atrocities. Social media and misinformation has been used to promote instability and spread political conflict and call for violence. Uh, so I would specifically like to mention the Israel-Palestine conflict that's happening now, and the lot of misinformation that has been spread. The misinformation by the Israeli government that 40 babies had been beheaded. What it spread like wildfire, but no substantial proof was provided for it, and even the White House had to come up and say that that was false and it wasn't verified. Coming to the Facebook's ethical failures, Facebook business model has always been criticized for creating filter bubbles, as they say, where most inflammatory contents achieve the greatest visibility, leading to an extremistic behavior and bullying and hate speech. The third example that I have is rewriting of history in Philippines. So social media content was used by the new government to discredit the previous government's president, Ferdinand Marcos record, and which included many false claims. And last would be COVID-19 misinformation. So disinformation campaigns propagated for political gain, uh, or to target activists deliberately and spread falsehood was done. So this I referred from Harvard article. It was titled battling the pandemic misinformation. So coming to the policies, so the main challenge that lies is passing the laws, since social media and political discourse is so subjective. Creating a general law is very difficult for this. And political instability and mass atrocities, I referred People Under Threat 2019 by Minority Rights Group. Here they mention the mass atrocities that's happening in, they also talk about what's happening to the minorities in Myanmar, India, and other places. Then there is the impact of democratic process and human rights by European Parliament, where they mentioned about the disinformation that undermines the human rights and many elements of good quality democracy, let's say. So coming to the law and enforcement, so protecting democracy from this information. So I referred protecting democracy from disinformation. uh, it was authored by Christiano. Here he mentioned that for protecting the democracy, we need to have open discussion, dialogue, and we have to work against censorship. so both the parties can equally engage and equally raise their political views over the social media. And legal and ethical issues in social media, I referred this article, Ethical Gray Areas, Trolls and More. This is by American Society. Here they mentioned about how to monitor hashtags, event pages, and location of the data, and about cyberbullying in general. And by Brennan Center, they had an article where they mentioned about principles for social media use by law enforcement. So it suggested a couple of methods where the law enforcement can use social media to track the bad actors. So, coming to the types of law regarding social media and politics, civil law, legal. So, exploring civil law unveils like dynamic between social media platforms and legal responsibility. So, I referred a paper from Tufekci 2014. It illustrated the significance of legal actions against these platforms for neglecting moderate harmful content over violating users' rights. It They also spoke about filing lawsuit that serves as a potent means to hold these platforms responsible for their actions or inactions, whatever the case may be. And each legal case is taken as a testament for further process. So suppose there was a case where Facebook was held responsible. So if that case could be used for a case against if the same thing is happens over Twitter, for example. Criminal law is completely different. Criminal law. For this, I referred RID 2018 paper published by him, and where they mentioned the coordinated disinformation campaigns and cyber attacks targeting political entities. So this would be considered as a criminal law. And instances where like malicious actor demands ransom or is from a foreign entity that deserves a criminal law for it. For the research being done for social media disinformation, I found an research of algorithmic bias. Here, this research exposed how algorithmic bias is geared black minority towards the black minority and others. This was a very good paper done by Bakshi et al. In 2015, and he basically showed that this uh, diverse viewpoints that can lead to increased political polarization. Then the second paper is Beyond News Content. This was published in IEEE. The authors introduced a relationship between embedding framework, where simultaneously models publisher news relations and users interaction. It basically uses all these data to basically predict whether the information or the news is fake or real. The study also demonstrated that this approach significantly outperformed other baseline methods for fake news detection. It is a very good article, I would suggest. Coming to the deepfakes and generative AI, it is of a big concern, such a big concern that it had to be included in Bill C-11 specifically. The with the ability to generate highly realistic but entirely fabricated audio and video is very dangerous, since you can enact a very prominent uh, public figure and make him say anything that your agenda feels like. Coming to Bill C-11, it is a proposed legislation in Canada, aims to enhance online privacy and protections and combat cyberbullying, harmful content, etc., by introducing measures to strengthen online privacy acts and hold platforms accountable for content they host. This article I found in government's website, justice.ca.ca. And next would be filtering and censorship. Here, instances of political interference and censorship on social media. So, in the case today, we are seeing that censorship is being done for Palestinian activists who are trying to raise their voice for what's happening in Gaza, and they are being censored. So this is very dangerous, since you are allowing one part of the conversation to take place and suppressing the other. Uh, for this, I referred Helberger and De Vries 2019 paper. Next, I would like to discuss about the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Here, this scandal brought to light the unauthorized harvesting of Facebook user data for political purposes, highlighting the ethical implications of data privacy. And for this, I refer to Cadwalder and Graham Harrison, 2018. And last, I would like to talk about Russian interference in elections. So for in the 2016 and 2020 elections, they said that uh, Russia had a big role in basically exploiting social media platforms to spread disinformation and influence electoral outcomes in various countries. But this was specifically geared towards US. The manipulation of public opinion through targeted misinformation and campaign poses challenges in the democratic process itself, and it basically it requires robust cybersecurity measures and international cooperation to tackle this. So for this, I referred to 2018, which provided a very brief evaluation of his data. Moving on, political power of social media companies. So tech giants like Facebook, Twitter, even Google with its YouTube platform is has become very powerful. So much so that taking them down uh, uh, and basically they have a very good lobbying power in the parliament and the congress as well, so they can get away with many of the things and they can have their way with laws and policies that are being made in the congress. So uh, this is the point that made by Helberger and De Vries in their 2019 paper, can in AI we trust. And talking about the regulatory challenges, so Gale and Berkey discussed in their 2019 work about the need for platform accountability with concerns about stifling innovation and complex regulatory process. Then there is market dominance. So as you know, Facebook, Twitter, Google are the market leaders and they are dominating it. So any other platform such as Dailymotion or Rumble, they aren't able to sway the public over to them, since these giants have such great hold of the public. And then there is the algorithmic influence. The algorithmic deployed by these platforms dictate the visibility and the reach of the content. So, if I want to give an example, so many of the Palestinians that are posting photos and videos of what's happening over there is being censored. Their accounts are being blocked, and their accounts are being banned. So this kind of one-sided view, letting one-sided view to take over their platform, is very dangerous and a point of concern for everyone. Then we can speak about lobbying and advocacy, where social media companies, as we know, they always engage in extensive lobbying and efforts to get their legislative agendas done. So for this, I referred again Gale and Berkey in their 2019 work. So coming to the recent developments, Google and Canada came to an agreement about the news distribution. I think it was previously done by the Australian government, where they basically said that you have to pay the journalists and the news agencies, the traditional news agencies, whatever the amount that you are, whatever the amount suggested. Since what Google does is, so whenever someone asks something on Google, it takes the data from these websites, it scrapes the data from these websites and presents it on the top. So the person, so the news agency doesn't get the credit for it and is also not being paid for it. So this was demanded by the Australian government and they had negotiations between them. So recently the agreement between Google and Canada, it basically signified the development of news distribution and the government policies coming in together. So the implication that it had was, the agreement, it had um, interplay between technology, media, and governance. It raised the question about balance of power between tech giants and traditional media outlets, as well as the role of government intervention in regulating digital platforms. So for this, I had referred CBC News. And coming to the social media platforms, it has a great impact on democracy. It can either make the democracy or make the democracy work against you. So it depends on how these social media platform giants implement solutions and implement policies in their platforms. So amplification of disinformation in this, social media platforms serve as breeding grounds for echo chambers that I mentioned. So for this, I had referred Wardle and Direction 2017 again, and polarization and fragmentation. We see that the algorithmic uh, curation of content we see over the social media, it basically divides the people into different segments, and then these different segments come again for the political engagement over in the comment section, which generates billions in revenue, ad revenue. But this I found referred in Paris at 2011. But this process, it hurts the democratic institutions, as well as it hinders the consensus building, and it also compromises the functioning of the society. So additional dimensions that I would like to talk about is online activism. So here social media platforms play a crucial role, as I talked about in Palestine-Israel situation, where online activism of one side of the story is being oppressed, and regulatory challenges and balancing the need for free speech to go through on these platforms is very necessary, so that everybody can have a great discussion without harming anyone. Thank you. That will be all for my presentation. Hope you liked it. I would like to conclude by saying my password. That would be world. So thank you.